Sichuan province in the heart of China, land of the great dynasties, home of the most loved and most endangered of all the Earth's creatures. Only 1,000 giant pandas remain in the wild. Dr. Sue Menke has had a lifelong passion for pandas. In 1987, a dream came true when she was sent to Wolong to work with these enchanting animals. Now her work here may be critical in helping save the giant panda from becoming little more than a zoological rarity, or perhaps, unthinkably, even just a memory. The Chinese call it the land of the sleeping dragon. High on the mountains that rise towards the top of the world, swirling mists and shifting cloud shroud a rain-drenched land. Beneath the forest canopy, the humble bamboo swathes the upper reaches of these slopes. For the mere handful of giant pandas that still live in the wild, bamboo is the staff of life. Without these succulent leaves, it will be gone forever. The Chinese government acknowledges the almost pop star international status of the panda. They've responded with panda reserves, as well as research centers for breeding captive animals. Here at Wolong, world experts have been invited to contribute their knowledge. Sue Menke first looked after pandas on loan to Calgary Zoo for the '88 Olympics, and a preparatory crash course in panda care at Wolong was unforgettable.
I can remember the first time I came to Wolong in 1987. It was like coming to Mecca. It was the realization of many, many dreams. And I kind of forgot most of the details because I floated through the visit and certainly had no idea that I would be coming back 4 years later and enduring 3 very interesting years living here with the people and working with them.
As a vet, Sue works with all kinds of animals, yet she's always had a soft spot for the giant panda.
I'm a pandaholic from way back. Ever since I was a kid, I couldn't help looking at a panda without going ooh and ah. And getting to know their personalities and learning about the land they come from just makes them more intriguing to me.
Today, the panda is a world symbol for endangered wildlife, but until 100 years ago, no Westerner had ever seen one. Pandas are elusive animals, living solitary lives hidden in forests on inaccessible mountainsides. And up until very recently, virtually nothing was known about what made these animals tick. But today, researchers like Sue Menke are helping to solve some of the mysteries. Even though the Chinese call the panda beishun, the white bear, pandas are not real bears, but a unique species that began evolving from that family some 20 million years ago. The smaller red panda is another native of these mountain ranges, but is classified as a member of the raccoon family. If Charles Darwin had ever had the privilege to meet a giant panda, he would have relished pointing out the animal's powerful jaws, evolved for chewing tough bamboo stems and leaves. A look at their paws, where they've grown a sort of rudimentary thumb that lets them hold the thin canes, would have been ample proof of the wonders of evolution and natural selection. The 200-pound giant pandas still sport a bear-like warm fur coat and sharp claws that get them out of trouble. They may not win gold on the parallel bars, but who said pandas needed to be graceful anyway? For the giant panda, bamboo is their bread and butter, their staple diet. But as more and more land is broken in for farming, the vast bamboo groves that pandas need to survive are being relentlessly whittled away. Places that the panda used to call its own are now few and far between. At Wolong, the researchers tackle conservation of the giant pandas with wild animals as well as with captives.
And Xinxing looks like he's getting ready.
There are 25 panda residents at the research facility, and they're trying to find out how best a captive breeding program can fit into the overall picture of conserving the panda as a species.
So Xinxing is 120 kilos, you said?
Eventually at Wolong, it's hoped to secure enough offspring that some can be returned to the wild.
Xinxing!
Xinxing.
She's eating okay today?
Today she's gonna drop the milk stool.
Uh-oh.
Some miles away, Sue Menke trudges up a mountain slope looking for telltale signs of wild pandas. But survey work in the field can be slow and yield disappointing results, which is why the captive animals are so important.
Conservation of any species no longer involves solely work in the wild. It involves work with people who are working in the areas where that species lives. And in many cases, it involves working with captive animals, because there are many questions we need answered to conserve wild species that can only be answered by studying animals that are in captivity. There is no argument that conservation in the wild is the priority, but captive management and captive breeding is a very valuable adjunct for many species, in particular the giant panda.
Pandas are notoriously hard to breed in captivity. Sue and Wei Rongping are studying a smear from a young female who's just coming into season, and by counting certain blood cells, they can find out whether it's time to introduce her to Mr. Right. In the panda's mating game, time is very much of the essence. They can only conceive on 2 or 3 days in any one year. By encouraging the use of these fertility tests, Sue has helped Wolong become one of the most successful panda breeding centers in the world. In the 8 years before Sue came here, Wolong produced but 1 baby. In the next 3 years, there were 8.
Captive breeding is an important part of panda conservation for many reasons. One of them being they provide a storehouse of animals that we will be able to use eventually for reintroduction when we're able to reclaim some bamboo habitat for these animals. Another important reason is we need the genetic information that some of these pandas have, don't we? And finally, we can learn a lot about the animals in the wild by observing them in captivity. For example, it's been studies done on captive animals that have helped us understand some of their adaptations to eating bamboo. You can see how my friend Zhuang is grabbing this branch so that he can get the nice succulent leaves off of it. And what a huge ridge he has on the top of his skull here to support the muscles that he needs to chew all of this bamboo. Unfortunately, the rest of his body hasn't kept up. He has the digestive tract of a carnivore, something like you and I, and he prefers to eat this bread, which he can digest much more easily. When he eats bamboo, he only digests about 20% of what he takes in, whereas with this lovely mixture of apples and wheat and eggs, he can digest more like 80%.
Bamboo is the ultimate in high-fiber diets, so low in nutrients that the animals have to eat up to half their own weight in bamboo shoots every day. Since this chow hardly constitutes a panda power bar, the animals have to conserve their energy for when it counts, like mating, for example. But most of their life is spent alone, browsing and chewing. Mere socializing is too much like hard work. Pandas seem to have lucked out at Wolong. Each day they get a special balanced diet of goodies on top of all the bamboo they can eat. But after a lifetime of the panda equivalent of Allbran, it's no surprise that Jean-Jean seems to go for the home cooking. And anyway, when you're the star attraction and on stage half your life, you need that extra energy.
The future of pandas in Wolong right now seems to be fairly bright. They are participating here in Wolong with national programs such as censusing, training programs for the guards, and incentive programs to help curtail activities such as poaching. And as long as we have ambassadors like Zhuang here, and the public becomes more and more aware of what pandas need to survive, I think that we'll be able to conserve them.
Represent hope for the future of the giant panda. While Sue Menke, a Westerner working in concert with her Chinese colleagues, has knowledge that will help to ensure the very survival of the panda species, she's quick to point out that her role is primarily to pass on her expertise.
My job here was to make myself obsolete, and the first things I concentrated on were the things I knew best, which were veterinary things. And I trained the staff there who had not had that much veterinary technical training to do some of those things. My role here was to be a catalyst, to marry Western science with Chinese science, to show these people that they really know an awful lot about pandas, and to help them put all their knowledge together, to be proud of it, and to enhance it.
In the wild, pandas are shy, to say the least. In captivity, it's never been a simple matter to put animals at their ease. What with researchers, not to mention the public, poking their noses into the panda's most intimate moments, it's not surprising that the animals are a bit backwards at coming forward. But at Wolong, they have a solution: video monitoring. The camera monitors the animals without disturbing them, and provides a valuable record of the panda's secret behavior. Pictures of a panda giving birth are extremely rare, yet the camera at Wolong has captured this extraordinary event.
It will become... It's open.
Whoa!
Come out, car!
She just burped. There it was.
Cubs are born blind, without fur, and totally helpless. Tiny creatures dwarfed by their mothers 1,000 times their weight. Their only protection is a powerful cry. Pandas are often born as twins, but 2 cubs are more than most mothers can handle. The second is normally ignored and will die.
God, he's small.
He wants to pick up both babies.
But she can't do it, can she?
Yeah, cannot, you see?
No, there's one by her one paw there and one in her mouth. Okay, she's turned her back on it, that's it.
At Wolong, however, help could be at hand. This is one of the first places in the world to hand-rear a baby panda past 3 months.
That's right. There are now something like 15 panda reserves in China, and only about 2 or 3 of them have a captive management facility for pandas in them. Wolong, of course, is the most famous and the largest, and this is where they're marrying together the captive management and the things that they're learning from pandas in captivity with some of the field research. And they're trying to put those together to help decide where to establish other reserves and what conditions will be necessary for reintroduction of pandas into new reserves.
Giant pandas are devoted mothers and nurse their offspring diligently, and the young don't start eating bamboo for at least a year. Unlike their solitary parents, the yearlings are as playful as any young animal. The panda's cuddly image is deceptive. They can be fiercely aggressive, as some zookeepers have found out the hard way. To most of us, the idea of these young pandas spending their lives in captivity is less than ideal, although that's not a sentiment shared by most Chinese.
It's interesting, during my time here I've learned very much that Chinese people do not understand why a wild animal wants to be wild. Why would you be out there in the forest, where it rains, where it snows, where you got to get your own meal, when your option is to have 3 meals a day and a roof over your head? They think that doesn't work. So there is a cultural gap there that we Westerners have to learn to deal with. And if we want to help the Chinese conserve pandas, we must also accept their point of view, and especially in light of the fact that captive management is going to be an important part of conservation of this species. 2 more babies this year? Maybe 1 more to come if Dong Dong has hers yet?
Yeah.
Success breeds success, and at Wolong, building a new panda facility is well underway. What's exciting for Sue Menka is that the place is custom built to take into account what the panda researchers have already learned from the captive animals.
These new open areas are made to address some of the things about panda behavior that we're just starting to understand. We've always known that for breeding success, compatibility is a big issue, but we never really understood how that worked. And we now are starting to cope with the understanding that females need to have a choice of males. And what this is designed to do is to allow a female to go to either side of her pen where suitable males will be and make her choice. Makes our life a lot easier, and she gets the boyfriend that she wants.
The construction of the new centre is encouraging and is a reflection of the success that Wolong already has had with its panda research. But away from the research centre, the situation is less heartening. Giant pandas are still in danger of becoming extinct in the wild. Despite its high profile around the world and 20 years of conservation, the panda's survival is still too close to call. How could an animal as widely loved as the giant panda be driven to extinction? Hunting and poaching are one cause, but above all, it's the wholesale destruction of the animal's habitat. As forests are cut down, often for firewood, it's hastening the end of a 20-million-year history for wild giant pandas. In the last 30 years alone, relentless deforestation has robbed the panda of a full third of its forest home. Overgrazing has damaged what's left beyond recovery. Conquering these mountains for our own ends is simply part and parcel of mankind's explosive growth. All the time we're drawing the noose ever tighter and ever closer to an irreversible conclusion. Even 15 years ago, the Wolong researchers recognized that time was not on their side. Now they're having to move even faster to discover whether there's any hope that the wild giant pandas can adapt to their changed circumstances. High in the Sichuan Mountains, the field station at Wuyipeng is a base camp for exploring the remotest panda country. Although it's extremely difficult to actually spot a panda here, the telltale signs can offer a host of pointers to discovering how well the species is surviving.
The field research we're doing here at Wuyipeng is fairly basic research involving walking the trails. We look for panda stool, we look for panda feeding sites, we look for nesting sites, anything that will give us some sort of indication that a panda was here, and approximately when they were here, and what they were doing while they were here.
What Sue Menka and her Chinese colleagues have discovered is going some ways to giving hope that the future of the panda is not slipping from our grasp. The results of their investigations will give them a more accurate idea as to how well giant panda numbers are standing up. But these dedicated men and women are under no illusions. There's still deep cause for concern.
When I think about the panda's ultimate survival, there are lots of things I worry about. I worry about the fact that this country's population is growing at the rate of about 57,000 births a day. I worry about the fact that the Chinese people are so busy trying to improve their lifestyles and their economy is growing so quickly that they are going to forget about conservation and they're going to forget about pandas in an effort to achieve what I have already. And I worry that the Chinese government has so many other priorities that pandas just aren't going to be high enough. But I hope that all of those things can be overcome. And we'll see. One important aspect of every conservation project has got to be public awareness, and here in Wolong, that's certainly happening. We've got the big sign behind us which says that Wolong is a panda's home, and right down to the garbage bins which tell you to protect the giant panda. And one of the things we've been doing at the breeding center is establishing the Wolong Panda Club. Everybody who comes to visit Wolong know what is specifically going on here in the reserve, vis-a-vis captive breeding, field research, and down to how many babies are born and who's breeding with who. That kind of information really brings pandas close to home for people. The panda's Chinese, extremely Chinese. It's elusive, it's mystical, and it lives with 1.2 billion Chinese people. Although perhaps we can provide some ideas and some suggestions that may help them, ultimately the Chinese people will have to save the panda. Everybody asks me if I think the panda's going to survive. And being an optimist, I have to say that I wouldn't be here if I didn't have hope. I have hope every time I see a baby being born. I have hope every time I see the face of one of my Chinese colleagues come up with a new idea. I have hope when I see school children coming to see pandas and going to mush just like I do when they look at a baby's face. That gives me great hope. As far as the challenges that they face, the biggest, of course, is learning to coexist with people who want a better life. Finding the answer to the problem of coexisting with people is how the panda will be saved.
More Champions of the Wild on Monday at the same time, when we learn how Canada is re-establishing its wild wolves. And a whole hour of wildlife on Sunday night when Call of the Wild tells of the orphaned leopard cub.